Good evening. To those in the room and Ellen online. We've been working with Vow the last couple days, working with the stories of our own life and exploring what's there. And we may have come up with a number of insights. We may be building a vow that we might like to say aloud to each other. These insights and these forming vows need a place to land. If we're just thinking about our life and thinking about our vows, they're just thoughts. It's with Zazen, it's with the cultivation of a Zazen practice, the cultivation of deep, settled presence, that insight can land and actually take root in our system, actually take root in our life. Chosen Roshi once gave an example of looking at a journal she had from college. And a year before she ended a relationship with a boyfriend, she had actually written in the journal, I should end this relationship. But when we're busy, when we have 1,000 other thoughts a day, it's hard to act on our insights. They come and they go. Here is where the clear engagement of our Zazen practice and our practice of engaging with vow comes to life. Building this foundation of clarity and presence so that we can engage with our vows with clarity and presence. Here is the cultivation of faith in Zazen. Part of that faith is simply recognizing the necessity of the practice in our life. Last night, Taigen talked about the cultivation of his own vows, a very beautiful example. of facing challenge, facing obstructions, facing doubt, and stepping forward within all of that, because of all of that, learning from it and using it as an opportunity, using it as a gift. Turning on a dime. We never know. Circumstances will always change, and we never know the outcome. And we can learn to actually deeply appreciate this not knowing. You may have noticed that the human mind often turns to the negative. How much better to just not know? I'd like to use another example that is similar to Taigen's that you may have heard before. I've heard it a number of times from Hogan and Chosen. And this is the story of how they came to Clatskanie, Oregon, how they came to the present space of Great Vow Zen Monastery. They started out, well, first they left ZCLA and came to Oregon and practiced in Portland, shared a practice space with another Zen community, and then eventually bought a residential 10 acres on Larch Mountain, which is in the gorge. They spent 10 years there cultivating the space, building the zendo, growing the residential population, having retreats, and were about to lay concrete and build up their zendo, make it a larger space, a more permanent space. And the day before this is the story I've heard, the day before the concrete trucks arrived, they got a notice. Their neighbors had complained and said that you cannot have this retreat space in this residential setting. Too many cars coming and going, too much noise, whatever the neighbors said. So imagine that news. Maybe you've received news similar in your life in some form or another. They had this strong vow to teach and share the Dharma, and it was manifesting in a way that they were excited about, pleased with on Larch Mountain. And then suddenly, unexpectedly, it comes crashing to a halt. Now, some of us would have given up, turned away, shut down, and maybe there was elements of that alive in Hogan and Chosen, moments of all of those flavors. But they kept their orientation, they kept their vow to share the Dharma, to start a monastery. they kept that as their primary focus and began looking for a new space, which took time until finally, in about 2000, they found an old abandoned elementary school in Klatskanai, which most people do not know how to pronounce, including me when I first heard it. Klatskanai, Oregon. The property was $1 million and they had 30 members. Their faith in the Dharma was obviously very strong. Their determination was clear. They knew their vow. They did not have doubt about the vow. They did not know how the vow would manifest, when or how or where or what it would look like exactly, but they knew their vow. So they managed to buy this elementary school that was filled with books and holes in the roof and critters and desks. And the challenges continued. It took time to befriend this rural Oregon town. The folks of Klatskanai remembered the Rajneeshis of Oregon and were genuinely concerned that this was a cult moving into their community. So Hogen Roshi put an enormous amount of effort into humanizing himself, into ingratiating himself with Klatskanai, joining the Kiwanis Club and inviting people to the monastery. Their vow continued. And what they will both say now is that turning, that forced turning away from Larch Mountain was one of the best things that ever happened. That because of that experience, because of that moment, here came this opportunity, this elementary school that is beautifully built to host a Zen monastery. This elementary school with 44 acres of woods and field, close enough to Portland to connect the city Sangha. They'll also say that vow, although they're incredibly determined individuals, and they, as individuals, did an enormous amount of work to bring that vow into a physical form, that vow could only be made manifest by all of the beings that joined their hands together in the effort to create a monastery, that continue to join their hands together in an effort to create a monastery. So we never know. The worst that can happen, our darkest hour, can prove to be just the pivot that we need to bring forward our strongest vows. And the challenges that we have can inspire us to be of service to others who face similar challenges. Hogen and Chosen Roshi had great confidence. That's a word that I've been using this week. Sitting in a posture of receptivity and confidence. It can make people a little nervous because we're so afraid of appearing arrogant. But that's not the kind of confidence that I would like to talk about tonight. Because confidence, building confidence, isn't, in this particular translation, about getting it right. What we can see, especially in this kind of container, is that confidence is actually about falling down, messing up, making mistakes, and seeing that the world doesn't end, that our friends still love us, that we are okay, and there's no need not to try again. Because as Taigen talked about last night, and as I talked about with Hogen and Chosen, the word mistake is something we use, but we could also say everything is an opportunity to learn and grow. Our challenges can be places of learning and growth that can then turn into very beautiful and heartfelt offerings. What's really lovely about sharing in a Zen style container at a temple or a monastery is that we can practice this confidence of falling down, seeing it's all right, and continuing. We come into this container of sesshin and take on roles that we've never done before. Timekeepers and drum players, dishwashers, altar keepers, meal cooks. We will burn the oats. We will hit the wrong bell. We will, in Sangha, say really awkward things to each other. And it's okay to cry a little bit and feel confused. And then see, I messed up and it's fine. What can I learn from this? This is the kind of confidence that we need when cultivating vow. Down 9 times, up 10. Confidence is not about getting it right. It's about messing up and being fine. Mental pliancy, moving with the moment, responding to circumstance. It's a posture of willingness and also innocence. Confidence, is it believable? Confidence is innocent. These are the attributes of cultivating and maintaining a vow. Hogan and Chosen had this willingness to continue to step forward and a kind of innocence. I don't know what's going to happen. Moment after moment, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. These are the ingredients of vow. Another word for vow, because sometimes that word doesn't sit quite right. Orientation, anchor, pivot point, direction, intention, foundation. How do you want to be in the world? How do you want your world to be? The lovely thing about joining a Zen Sesshin container is that we're basically handed an orientation, handed the anchor. We don't always need to know, and we don't have to do it by ourselves. So together we take up this orientation. We hold this anchor. It can be a great relief. So our orientation during this retreat is practice, continuous practice. We mark that, celebrate that by continuously turning towards Zazen, caretaking of the temple, our act of service, of wholehearted engagement with service. And also sanctifying the day with the liturgy of the hours. Sanctifying the day with the liturgy of the hours. Chanting service can be an important reminder that our foundation is here in continuous practice. Entering the mind stream of the ancestors. entering into the aspiration to awaken with all beings, joining our voices as the physical manifestation of this aspiration. So chanting, service, and zazen take precedent in this container. Whatever else we're doing, maintaining the temple, cleaning the kitchen, personal contemplations, group work, when the time comes and the bell rings, set it down, let it go, and chant. Especially when we first start, that orientation, that aspiration towards awakening with all beings is almost impossible to maintain. So this continuous sanctifying the day with the liturgy of the hours is this continuous reminder. We wander off, the bell rings, we come back. We wander off, the bell rings, we come back. And that wandering off, as the retreat continues, might become closer and closer till it's just this off, back, remember, off, back, remember, merging. In chanting together, in sitting zazen, in cleaning the temple, eating oryoki meals, sweeping, cleaning, taking out the trash, it is in these doings that this temple is. Sangha Jewel exists only in the doing of Sangha Jewel. There is no Sangha Jewel outside of the doing. Buddhas are placed, art is hung, cushions laid out. They mean nothing in themselves. We bring the meaning, the texture, the liveliness. There isn't a Sangha Jewel outside of the experience of Sangha Jewel. Where would that even be? This is vow, lived, embodied. The vow of Sangha Jewel is in the moment-to-moment doing, the taking out the trash, the sweeping of the floor. So this essential work we've been doing this week of contemplating our vows and pondering our life is essential work. And we also need to just do. And we can't worry so much about the thinking mind. The thinking mind will always come up with something. There will always be something to complain about or worry about or have judgment about. Vow is not this projection into the future, it's this step. Even if we have a vow to start a monastery, it's with each step that that monastery comes into being. We put our bodies into the vows. So if we have a vow to support our Sangha and it's time to do the dishes, we step up to the sink. And again, the mind will have its say. It will have its concerns and complaints and judgments. It might actually be overflowing with them in the moment. But we step forward because the vow is our pivot point. And we as practitioners have the freedom not to believe everything we think and not to take everything we think so seriously. Jogen Sensei, one of my teachers, once said, "The personality is a garden with very strange plants growing in it." Zazen isn't so much a practice of getting the personality right. There's a level of acceptance of like, well, I'm awkward and I bumble and I'm messy and here it is. We set up our intention to be clear and compassionate human beings. And that's what we can do. And again, the mind can think anything. In some ways, it's very personal. It's our own thoughts, our own mind. And in another sense, I'm sure throughout the day, there's all kinds of thoughts that come into our heads that, where did they come from? How did they float through? Are they actually ours? Hogan Roshi often says, we can think anything. You can even think, I'm a banana. I'm a raccoon. I'm going to set off to space in a squirrel suit. But again, we cultivate a vow and this thinking mind in a way becomes secondary. And practice isn't about getting it right or finally figuring it all out. There's this idea of arrival that we, I think in a consumerist culture, we've had to negotiate that we bring to our practice life. Once I get the car, the house, or the job, I will arrive, and therefore, and we bring that attitude to our practice. This practice isn't about getting it all figured out. In fact, the nature of Zen practice is as soon as we think we've got it all figured out, if we keep practicing, the rug gets pulled. Nothing to stand on. We don't know what we don't know. I'd like to touch on one other theme. Today we wrote a little bit about our gifts and how we would like to engage with them in relation to vow. One way to think about gifts is just like thoughts. In some ways, they really aren't personal. In some ways, they have nothing to do with us. Karma ripening. We are the culmination of everything that's ever happened. We are continuously at the apex of everything that's ever happened. How could we know why we are fast readers or have long fingers that are good for piano. Some people are born into, muscly, athletic bodies that are healthy. It's just happening. It's not personal. Some people went to very good schools and received world-class educations. It's not personal. And in the same sense, it's very personal. How are we going to use these gifts that are just happening? How best to serve given the skills that we seem to have? Infinite causes and conditions have come together to make us this mysterious being. How can we offer it to all these other mysterious beings? As I said in the beginning, vow can be a catalyst for inspired, determined, dedicated Zazen practice. Inspired, dedicated, determined practice with the precepts and Dharma study. Because these are some of the ingredients that can help us clean up some of the messy karmic ripenings that are happening. Help us clean up so that we can be of service, so that we can be a vessel for goodness and light. It's not personal. And yet it is the only life we know. It's not personal, and it is our great responsibility to acknowledge these gifts that we have. Each person has a unique offering. Each person's heart's aspiration belongs and can be shared. And it's up to each one of us to recognize it and bring it forward.